Hello, and welcome to part 6 of the philosophy of the Ananke. Your author here, Lance Gordon. We are up to page 33 on the bottom if you actually have a copy of the book. But for now, let us continue our reading in chapter 3, page 33. The lesson of relaxation. How do we know when we are in balance? What do we experience? We try to get back into balance, but how do we know when we have arrived? If this is the primary directive, then it would be useful to have some idea of what the target feels like. Is it the feeling of ecstasy? Is it the feeling of orgasm? Is it the feeling of infatuation? Is it the feeling of eternal love? Let us examine this concept from a different direction. We know what imbalance feels like. Disruptions, discords, and negative events produce a state of anger, frustration, depression, apathy and the like. We normally search for high positive stimuli in order to make us feel better again. We may turn to drugs, smoking, alcohol, sex, vacations, movies, shows, skydiving, purchasing material possessions, food, and the like. We are fooled into thinking that these stimuli are, quote, where we want to be, unquote. But the feeling never lasts. We never feel high for any significant length of time. So we search for new stimuli in order to make us feel high again. We seem to want a maximum high in life, but we never quite succeed. Perhaps we are aiming at the wrong target. I propose that we are searching for these highs only as a countermeasure, as an opposing force to the negative feelings that we imbibe during the day. Eliminate the negatives, and we reduce the positives that we seem to require. Elderly, retired people don't seem to need such enormous stimulation. After we have come down on a vacation, we seem to be content to just kick back and relax. Maybe we all have missed the mark. Maybe the feeling of imbalance or being in tune or being centered within ourselves is merely the feeling of true relaxation. We've all felt this feeling at some time or other. If we get enough rest and wake up on a Saturday morning refreshed, how do we feel? Don't we feel relaxed combined with a moderately good feeling? Isn't it the case that these highs make us feel relaxed again? Isn't relaxation the middle feeling between our highs and our lows? Isn't it our moderate position, our emotional balancing point? So why go after the highs? Why not realize the goal of feeling relaxed and go after it as the end of our efforts? Sure, high situations may be needed, but only insofar as it produces a relaxed feeling. Why not minimize the negatives that we perceive and take action to reduce the discords? Then we will need less highs to achieve our real goal, the feeling of being relaxed. So this becomes critical if we are to obtain any lasting happiness. We must strive to act in a relaxed manner. We must recover from our imbalances to a relaxed state. Positives are great, but they are the profits and not the necessity of a happy life. The lesson of fairness. Are things fair? Does the animal kingdom treat each other in a fair manner? Do we treat each other in a fair and balanced way? Of course not. The world is not fair. Each one of us is self-interested, and therefore inadvertently, if not intentionally, tries to get more than the other guy. We want the advantage, but will settle for fairness if necessary. But is this natural tendency the best policy for our long-run benefit? I'm happy to say that it is not. Business is based on the fair deal when a long-term relationship is desired. Wise businessmen and wise businesswomen know that unfair practices backfire eventually. So a mature individual tends to fairness for his own long-term self-interest. In other words, for long-term relationships, the tendency toward equilibrium, balance, and fairness for all is necessary. Is the world fair? Of course not. But we are trying to be fair for our own long-term security and happiness. Those who are not fair enjoy their wealth for the limited high that they receive and then they require more. Those that try to be fair are rewarded with amplified positive feelings towards that which they acquire, and they become satisfied. Next section. Expressions of negative and positive change. The lesson of stress. What is stress? Are negatively perceived events stressful? Of course they are. Are positive events stressful? The claim is that the body and mind react in a similar manner to positive as well as negative change. But is this true? Let us take the positive situation of moving to a new improved dwelling. Sure, this is stressful, but is the stress coming from the end result or the negative process that we must endure in order to obtain the result? In other words, if we could close our eyes and be transported to the new house or apartment, then would we feel stress? If we were guaranteed that any breakage in the move would be replaced in better condition than before, would we fear any consequences? Let us say that we were guaranteed that if we did not like the new place after 90 days, we could get our money back and be transported free of charge to our old dwelling. Would we fear anything? Would we not enjoy the change and relish the idea of moving? Of course we would. Therefore, it is safe to suggest that stress is merely negative change that disrupts us, or may potentially disrupt our state of equilibrium. Positive change is great. It gets us back to equilibrium and improves our state of happiness. We just don't want to work for the positive change. We want to be kings and queens who are transported on a magical carpet to the new improved state of affairs. So reducing stress can be viewed as reducing negatively perceived change. To a certain extent, we can change our perceptions by changing our attitudes. But reality will prevail, and negative situations will still enter our lives. However, knowing the enemy will allow us to prepare for the highly probable events that may occur. In the final analysis, stress cannot be eliminated. It can and should be reduced. That is to say, we must accept the inevitability of negative change, but we can reduce the quantity that we receive and its impact. We can reduce it by the faith that negatives normally occur in a least destructive manner, thereafter elevating its severity of impact. In other words, we don't have to worry and prevent everything from occurring. 24 ounces of prevention is not worth a pound of cure. Remember, a pound is 16 ounces. Of course, we should take warnings and minor negatives as serious and take action against further complications. We should develop tools to counteract negatives so that when they occur, we can handle them in real time. This is great at reducing the negatives, but what should we do when they get the better of us? When the inevitable negative change disrupts our harmony of spirit? How do we handle it? Do we just endure the pain like good little martyrs? Does the Ananke want us to be in pain? Of course not. It wants, if that is the proper word, peace, harmony, balance, and a feeling of relaxation for all creatures and things. Our pain is a signal that we are out of balance. We must find ways of recovering to a state of balance and relaxation again. We must find ways to relax daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. We must develop techniques that achieve this goal. Perhaps a 20-minute nap in the car would do the trick. Perhaps a walk in the park. Perhaps prayer, meditation, music, hobbies, exercise, home projects, quote, mini vacations, and as a last resort, prescribed drugs or a shot of booze in moderation only. And so, stress is the negative change that we must endure. But are we free to learn, And so stress is the negative change that we must endure. But we are free to learn the way of Ananke and reduce our pain through technique. The lesson of boredom. This is an illusion in this country. It is implied that to be rich is to be happy, but even the idle rich get bored. It is hard to satisfy your fundamental needs and then do nothing. Boredom does not feel good. It is not a relaxed feeling. It is a feeling of negative tension that compels us to do something, anything. But why do we receive this feeling? Why can't we be satisfied by satiating our own needs? What is this order up to? And excuse me for a second, I'll be back in 1 minute. Okay, I'm back. So, why can't we be satisfied by satiating our own needs? What is this order up to? If we assume that the 4 patterns of Ananke are correct, then the answer becomes obvious. As long as the world remains in a state of imbalance, Ananke will not allow any of us to rest and be ultimately happy. It will demand action by, quote, touching us with a feeling, boredom. It will reward those that work towards its ultimate goal by delivering feelings of being needed. Positive thoughts of purpose and meaning will enter us if we try to promote the way. Essentially, the fortunate rich are being requested to do something with their wealth and idle time. They may choose to waste it on highs, but this will deliver only transient feelings. The only way to obtain strong, positive feelings that endure is to go with the Ananke rather than against it. The rich and the idle have a choice: be bored and endure pain, or help Ananke by starting good companies, businesses, and enterprises that promote balance for others. Acquiring wealth will not produce happiness. Promoting peace, tranquility, and harmony will. This is the way of the Ananke. This is the ultimate order of things. This is necessary. The lesson of evil, hate, sin, and crime. Since we all have pondered these concepts, I felt that testing the patterns of Ananke was necessary with respect to these ideas. I am not suggesting that evil and sin exist in the biblical sense. There is only necessity under Ananke. However, evil and sin can be defined by using the Ananke concepts. In this manner, we may gain an increased understanding of these classical thoughts. What is evil under the Ananke? What does hate mean? How do we explain sin and crime under this strange yet appealing belief? Are they manifestations of the general law as well? Yes, they are. In the light of negative change, we can say that doing evil is causing imbalance to others for our own self-interest. We cause negative change to happen to other creatures when we do bad deeds. Intentional sin is consciously causing disruption to others or ourselves. Unintentional sin is the same thing, except we do not realize the consequences of our actions or are temporarily unaware of the outcome until it happens. Under the concept of the Ananke, crime becomes an act of self-interest, which causes imbalance to others, as in the case of robbery. It is the win-lose situation. As a function of these injustices, we begin to feel hate. Hate for those who cause imbalance to our spirits and our bodies. Sometimes our negative state of affairs promotes hate to emerge, but without a concrete enemy. We are compelled to search for a hate target. We are compelled to find the culprit and eliminate him, her, or it. Unfortunately, we sometimes misplace this hate and anger, thereby targeting our loved ones, minority groups, or even ourselves. The intent of Ananke is to eliminate the source of the evil and not to just vent the feeling of hate. Injustice is never cured by more injustice. Evil necessarily breeds evil. Once again, Ananke is making us aware that others or ourselves are not promoting its way. It taps us on the shoulder with feelings of anger and hate when we or society go astray. It demands balance for all, and negatively caused change will not be tolerated. It is against the way. It must be avoided and eliminated in a least destructive manner. Next section. The lesson of love and doing good. What is love? What is the good? How do these thoughts relate to Ananke? Within the scheme of Ananke, doing good can be considered promoting positive change towards the goal of peace, equilibrium, and harmony. Seeking the good, as Plato contemplated, could be considered seeking balance, tranquility, and peace for all things. Doing good for ourselves is merely caring about our personal balance of body and mind. Ananke acts as if it wants us to do good for ourselves as well as others simultaneously. That is to say, it prefers a win-win situation, as discussed previously. Of course, if this is not possible, then it would prefer ourselves to win individually while minimizing the damage to others. This least damage could be to the dismay of other people, other animals, other plant life, or even to the physical environment. After all, life is full of pain and destruction, but we have the responsibility to minimize this damage under the laws of the Ananke. This is still, quote-unquote, the good. If others, through their own self-interest, promote our balance and well-being, we claim to like them. A funny acquaintance makes us feel good. A caring supervisor is a pleasure to work for. A person who invites us to dinner and cares about our welfare becomes a friend. An individual who makes us feel good most of the time we claim to love. We become infatuated with another person when she or he promotes our welfare and fills most of our needs. These needs or imbalances that we feel may be sexual or otherwise. The greater the need being filled, the greater the feeling of love. When the needs no longer exist, the feeling of love diminishes until it appears no more. So infatuation must end since our needs get satisfied. We can prolong the experience by not doing negatives to each other, but the high will end. All highs must end, for they are the extremes to the situation and not the balancing point. If we treat each other right, then we reach a state of relaxation and comfort with each other. That is to say, we become in balance and help each other get back into balance when discords come our way. The more we help each other, the more we promote the win-win, the more true love grows. It is in our self-interest to promote the good in our households. Our households will become a sanctuary, a haven, a refuge from the outside unjust world. It will become a place to heal and lick our wounds, so to speak. It will become a place where we can get back into balance and feel happy again. Expressions of the law of opposites. Still chapter 3. The lesson of good versus evil. Little has to be said about this lesson since we spoke about it before. Evil is promoting negative change away from harmony, and the good is promoting positive change, which is towards peace and harmony for all. In this sense, they are opposites. Their direction is opposite. And theoretically, Ananke would utilize these extremes to promote the balance for all. As an example, isn't evil produced by criminals who feel that they have significantly less than others around them? The unfairness of the world breeds evil as a displeasure to all of us. Evil is a reminder that the world is not in balance and is not fair. If evil did not exist, then the few would have everything, and the rest of us would literally be their slaves forever. This is not the case. Revolutions occur if the many are in too much pain compared with the few that seem to have so much pleasure. Revolutionaries are evil from the point of view of the establishment. Yet they are necessary in the scheme of things. It is when evil goes to the extreme and no longer promotes the welfare of the many that the good rise up against it. Good necessarily will keep evil in check. The balance of things will be promoted by virtue of good and evil. Good and evil are necessary until the world is in a state of peace and tranquility for all things under the Ananke. Until then, we must minimize the evil that we sometimes must do. We must promote the good that we would prefer to do. The lesson of pain versus pleasure. What is pain? What is pleasure? Do they fit into the scheme of things? This Ananke. How can we utilize these opposite concepts to make our lives feel better? There can be no doubt that pain is associated with physical and/or mental imbalance. A muscle that is damaged or disturbed from its equilibrium position delivers through chemical means a feeling, thought, a feeling thought of pain. A mind that is at rest does not enjoy the thought of a negative activity that it must do. The mind feels anxiety, tension, or stress. In other words, the mind feels pain. Thus, pain is an indication that a disturbance has occurred to our body or our mind. We are compelled by this feeling to do something. We are motivated to do an activity, which in turn would reduce or eliminate the anguish. Upon doing the right activity, the pain is reduced and balance is achieved once more. Once harmony is achieved, we are rewarded by the feeling that is pleasant. Is a Ananke signal that we have arrived at the proper point of harmony. But does all pain indicate the wrong direction? Is pain a signal that we are going against the flow? Not necessarily. Some pain in the short run is needed in order to ensure long-term pleasure. The process of education and acquiring knowledge delivers enormous quantities of distress. Exercise is not entirely pleasurable. Muscles do hurt after exertion. Therefore, the cost of pain must be examined against the profits of pleasure over a reasonable period of time. If the pleasure outweighs the pain, then do it. Conversely, pleasure in the short run does not necessarily indicate that we will receive pleasure in the long run as a consequence. Addictive drugs are extremely pleasurable, but their negative effects far outweigh their advantage in most cases. Extramarital affairs may be fun, but the emotional disturbances and possible physical illnesses far outweigh the momentary high. Once again, if the pleasure outweighs the pain over a reasonable period of time, then do it. In summary, pain and pleasure indicate our position with respect to our ideal balancing point under Ananke. Moving away from this proper point will produce a state of pain. Moving towards this optimal balance will produce a state of pleasure. This is not to say that we should obey the feelings of pleasure and pain in the present moment. We should not be guinea pigs and react to momentary feelings without the use of reason. We should examine our actions in the light of long-term pleasure and pain. If an action is pleasurable and has no negative consequences to all concerned, then by all means do it. If an action is negative and has negative consequences to those involved, then don't do it. If the situation is mixed, then we must weigh the long-term pleasure versus the long-term pain. If the pleasure exceeds the pain for all involved, then we may want to do the activity in order to receive the net benefit. Rather than evaluate every activity in this manner, it would be far easier to develop a technique that guarantees us a pleasurable outcome. Rather than starting with feelings and modifying our actions by utilizing reason, we should perhaps reverse this condition. In other words, why not start with reason in order to promote the proper pleasurable feelings to emerge? Why not go with the flow of Ananke and develop activities that promote overall balance? In this manner, we will feel proper long-term pleasure. Eventually, our sources of pleasure will be numerous and long-lasting. As time goes on, we will reach higher levels of pleasure, thereby approaching our ultimate goal of everlasting happiness in the present moment. The lesson of ugliness versus beautifulness. A flower in bloom, a child at rest, a tranquil sunset, and a perfectly formed body all have one thing in common. They all appear beautiful. But why do we comprehend it this way? Is it chance? Is it conditioning? Or is it something deeper? What is beauty? Why do we comprehend things as beautiful? Why do we comprehend other things as ugly? How do these opposite concepts relate to Ananke? Let us analyze it by viewing these concepts as possible expressions of the four primary patterns. In the light of the Ananke, the above examples have another thing in common. They all represent peaceful images or things that could deliver more peace and balance to ourselves if we could only possess them. Thus, it would benefit us to achieve the ideal body, or at least marry one. A child at rest makes us feel at peace, at least for the moment. The sunset or sunrise relaxes our mind and delivers balance to our tired spirits, for the moment as well. The order and balance of the flower hypnotically lulls our mind into a state of sympathetic harmony. Thus, beauty is a positive feeling that reflects the goodness of balance and harmony. If the flowers were a grove of poison ivy, I doubt that we would feel joy and comfort while standing in the midst of said grove. The beautiful, silent desert would appear to be an anxious sight if we had nearly died in the Sahara in earlier years. So beauty reflects harmony in a personalized, subjective way. If an object can get our minds or bodies to an increased state of harmony, then it will appear beautiful to us. On the other hand, objects or scenes that threaten our perceived tranquility in the present or in the future will appear ugly. Thus, bloodshed is not a very pretty sight. Diseased animals and people are a horror to view. People who are physically or mentally out of balance appear ugly and are avoided. A filthy, broken down house is not a sight for sore eyes. They are all in a state of imbalance, and our feeling relates to that concept in an instantaneous way. However, since beautifulness and ugliness are positive and negative feelings, they should be tempered with reason. Like pleasure and pain, our feelings can be deceiving. Some things that appear initially ugly may be beneficial in the long run. Conversely, beautiful objects may be detrimental to our health, given enough time. One thing is for sure, if we go with Ananke, then our lives will be full of things that offer us balance. Thus, it is inevitable that long-lasting beauty will surround us. Our eyes will be comforted by appealing sights if we truly follow the way. And I think at that point we may stop this. Let me just see where we are in terms of time. We're at 26 minutes, and therefore I want to stop this as well. So this was part 6. We will continue next time with part 7. Take care. See you soon.